Welcome back to Startup Q&A. So in this episode, one thing that we wanted to address is the concept of how do I know what fee to set for my marketplace? So if you didn't realize, fees or rake rates or commissions are used in all types of marketplaces, and those usually require the chicken and the egg problem of supply side and buy side, correct? So if you think about in Uber, that is a type of marketplace, except they predict what the rate is. They take 20%, and they also automatically, through their algorithms and just a lot of data, they're able to go ahead and map out how much a consumer will pay, right? So the supply side, the drivers don't really have an option. In most marketplaces, you have an option. You have the ability. Think about an Etsy. You think about a TaskRabbit. Think about all these different platforms that allow people, especially in the gig economy, those are normally marketplaces. And when you're thinking about a rack rate, there are typical rules of thumb that you want to go through, but I honestly think that you should let your market decide. And one way to do that is to determine like your liquidity. So how much time it takes for someone just entering on the platform to, as a customer, take an action that requires a transaction, it requires them to pay something, or for supply side, how long it takes them to actually make money on your platform. Once you figure out these two options, then you're able to kind of narrow down into what is a sensible amount of money to charge to keep your operations and expand your operations for your company, right? So it shouldn't just be 5%, 10%, 20%, because those are anecdotal at best. You're usually taking inspiration from another marketplace, but different marketplaces require different rates. And that is something that is hard to determine just by eyeballing what other people do. Like I said, Uber's at 20%, Gumroad I think is at 10%. A company I used to work for called Elliott, they're at 1%. There's a bunch of different ways that you can go about doing your market rates, but honestly, I recommend that you do it in a very, very technical and strategic fashion. Don't just take what other people say. Make sure that you're digging in and figuring out, okay, if this customer is only gonna buy 3 things from my marketplace a year, and this supplier it's gonna take, 3 months for them to get their first sale. Well, you don't wanna have a high market rate or a high rack rate to charge that seller to sell on your platform. Because if it's gonna take them 3 months to get their first sale, they'll never come back. So what you might wanna do is maybe have a higher rack rate after the year is done, and maybe a lower one, so it's like an introductory rate, so they pay no fees on the first, let's call it 3 months of operation on your platform. What you're trying to do is get them to get that taste in their mouth, like, oh, I can sell products on this platform. I can actually do a great job at this platform. And then when you get to that level, you're able to kind of go along and say, all right, well, I guess I'll stick around. It sees that I can make money here. And once they get that taste in their mouth, then you can go ahead and say, okay, that was an introductory rate. It was 0%. Now it's going to be 10% after the first year. And that'll help you kind of create that feedback loop of when you should change things. One thing that is very hard to do is after you've established it in the first place to go back and raise it again. So a lot of people, when they do that discount rate up front, it helps them with air cover so that they don't have to go back and say, oh, we're going to change the rules of the game. We're going to go ahead and raise those rates. And I think that that's really valuable, because if you start out at 1% and then 5 years later you pull, who just did this? Patreon does it like every 3 years. Oh my gosh, they do it like every 3 years, and everyone freaking hates it every time. And it's like, dude, just charge what you need to charge, and then maybe add a few features and make that premium, make that into a SaaS model. Don't keep raising your rates every 3 years, or people will hate you. And that's ended up being what happened. So now people are moving to Twitch, they're moving to Discord, they're moving to all these other places where they're pretty confident that they're not gonna have their rates change every few years. So that's one thing I would recommend. No matter what you do, charge high first and then discount it over time, rather than charging low first and then having to raise it over time. That's a pretty hard way to keep people on board, because the customers won't really care, but the supply side, they'll probably feel it a little bit more. Hopefully this helps.